Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Directors of School of Environmental Science, Bapak Emil Budianto, appreciate so much. Honorable for all resource persons and professors, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude with the blessing of all of that we get together here to get an international conference on environmental science and sustainable development with a preliminary workshop yesterday. Appreciate so much about the committee, and also appreciate so much about all participants here. And I think in the second one, I would like to express my gratitude to the committee in relation to the occasions. This is a very outstanding conference, and I appreciate so much about all participants. And thirdly, let me start with the beginning of the magnitude of global warming, even though I'm not very sure whether global warming is still around or not, because from time to time it's changing in terms of perspective. But knowing the situations of the local climate, for example, if it is accumulated once we are not there. Next slide, please. Just wait until the operator is working. Okay. Well, as we probably aware that it's not coming. Anyway, I just tell a story. Once upon a time, well, okay, the accumulated of local climate change would be the one that would referring to global warming. But I don't want to say that global warming is all around the world, but in fact, it's coming from, naturally it's coming from the earth, but quite sometimes it is closely related to the human beings' activities. And probably we know that the initial stage of, let's say, El Nino, there is very hot, drier season, where it comes from the thermoclines of the bottom of the sea in the central Pacific. It's come up to the surface, and it's attract all those moisture from the Southeast Asia. So it's going to be dried for Southeast Asia. This is a kind of natural situations, but in addition to that, human activities in relation to all activities related to local climate would be contributing also the local climate much drier than that expected. It's not coming. The story is finished. Well, okay. I don't know. Oh, good. This is first situation. Next slide. So we start from triple bottom line, the one that I mentioned. It is part of sustainable development. Next slide, please. Are you okay? Are you still around? Okay, we start from the climate change hotspots. This is the distributions of hotspots in all over places. And next slide, please. Okay, the top one is the El Nino, the conditions of El Nino. El Nino is coming from the bottom of the sea, that is Central Pacific, or even the west part of Chile or Peru in there. And thermocline due to the situations of hotter and drier in the bottom of the sea. It's coming up to the surface, and it's attract all those moisture coming from the Southeast Asia. Therefore, we come up with the dry seasons, or even extremely dry. And La Nina is the other way around, but not always coming after El Nino. But we can see that the distributions of the weather would be changing locally. Therefore, Indonesia and Myanmar, Vietnam is more drier than that expected. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a forest fire, and this is a kind of the trigger of the El Nino would be part of forest fire, but another part would be coming from human activities, like what happened now currently in Sumatra and eastern part of Sumatra, basically. It's ruined the situation of transboundary, as also mentioned by the Savage from NTU and also Zhang. He mentioned something about the distribution of forest fire. When I'll find a way where it is, such as disasters. But basically, human activity contributed a lot for local climate change. And as an example, in the forest fire, distribution of forest fire in the CPO corporations area. And Indonesia is currently trying to tackle all those things and then find all the corporations related to the forest fire. But in fact, some researchers mentioned that it has not to be defined. I mean, it has not to be taken the license, rather than give them the priority for training, especially for human activity or for those related to the capacity building. So, for example, one corporate would be doing properly and taking situation and in a good management of environment, but in fact all the next block would influence their area. So it's going to be, having more disruption for the area of palm oil itself. So it's not because of they themselves doing that, but the next block would be neighbor of corporate would be influencing their activities in there. So knowing the situation of this, most people are saying that this is because of, okay, much better. I'm trying to learn. Not working? For this only, it's not for that one. Okay. Where are we? Okay, unconvertible land use and excessive fossil fuel usage cause the temperature increase, which results in the increase on disease as part of environmental health, as well as disasters and drastic changes in ecosystem. Significant phenomena which are derived from accumulated local climate warming towards global warming, as such El Nino, and the other way around is La Nina. Southeast Asia is one of the hotspots for global warming. The Global Climate Risk Index reported that 4 of the world's 10 countries most affected by climate change are located in Southeast Asia, such as Myanmar, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam. Forest fire is one of the environmental issues, as I mentioned before, and Zhang and Savage also stated that incentives should be given instead of punishment to ASEAN countries that fulfill environmental standards, and putting responsibility for ASEAN in managing the region environment and putting reasonable responsibility for ASEAN in managing the region environment and encouraging ASEAN countries to conduct monitoring and evaluations functions and on behalf of environmental matters. A capacity building program that creates the self-regulated citizens regarding forest fires is also suggested. This is pretty clear that it's not always punishment, but we have to do in a wise manner, that is capacity building. Perhaps it's more humanistic later, will be discussed by the Professor Mahemi. And I think biodiversity is essential for sustainable economic development in ASEAN. Hydrologic cycle is the cycle. Next slide, please. This is basically hydrologic cycle. Well, the water travels from atmosphere to Earth only to return into the atmosphere. The process of this cycle consists of evaporation, condensation, advection, precipitation, and infiltration. Well, as I mentioned before, that biodiversity is essential for sustainable economic development in ASEAN. Realizing a healthy environment and food security. Related to this matter, ASEAN established ASEAN Center for Biodiversity in 2005 as a facilitation for cooperation and coordination among ASEAN member states with relevant national government, regional and international organizations on the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity as well as fair and equitable sharing benefits. Next slide. How far is relevant to us? This we mentioned before. In respect with the marine resource base, marine fish productions amount 14% and of world total, 35% of the world's mangrove forest, and about 30% of the coral reef. Coastal and marine resource brings ecological, economic, and social benefits to ASEAN. Working Group on Coastal Marine Environment, or what we call AWGOME, aims to ensure the sustainable ASEAN coastal and marine environment, representative ecosystem, pristine areas and species are protected. Economic activity are sustainably managed, and public awareness of the coastal and marine environment instilled. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in the field of water resources, next slide, four key issues are water supply management, irrigation management, storm water management, flood management, water pollution management, and sanitation management. ASEAN Working Group to Water Resource Management is a consultative platform for ASEAN states in promoting sustainability of water resource to ensure equitable accessibility and sufficient water quantity of acceptable quality. About half of people staying of ASEAN staying in the city. Next slide. Oh, this is about urban in there. No problems. In medium scope, one would focus on urban issues. Some of the issues are traffic congestion, probably the most noticeable main issues of urban development, especially in developing countries such as Indonesia. I think we move straight away rather than we spend the time for pictures. Next slide. This is traffic congestion I mentioned before, pronunciations, and also population demographic with bonus demographics for Indonesia up to 2030. Urbanizations, again, traffic congestions. Regional development is aimed at increased economic development and fulfill basic services with concern to the harmony between plan and space use. This will realize sustainability done by measures such as development on regional flagship sectors, communities and activities, distributions of growth central to underdeveloped region, and increasing regional competitiveness among the ASEAN member countries. As human resources play a significant role in inclusive and equal development, the government is committed to increase both quality and competitiveness of human resources. creating healthy, smart, adaptive, innovative, and skillful human resources. In summary, next slide. In summary, a lot of environmental issues in ASEAN are managed properly under certain institutions. All agencies would take care of monitoring and evaluation functions on behalf of environmental responsibility. Capacity building program among the ASEAN member countries are highly encouraged to create self-regulated citizens. Academicians and researchers who take any environmental research and studies which have significantly influence on the quality of life. Last but not least, I highly appreciate to all active participants of the outstanding conference and resource persons, and look forward to fruitful comments and discussion. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.